I'm going to try to do this without dropping the phone, the mic, or really messing up my words. This is going to be a long poem. It's Freedom 2022 edition. So 2022 is the last time that I revised this, and I originally wrote it in 2007. The fact that music has such an impact on literally every human and has more power than watching TV and doing what you see every other hour makes a wishful act of dominance. Music takes you to a place where you can embrace the beauty of something you cannot touch or control in terms of what the lyrics are, who sings it, where it's available for streaming, etc. Now, my friend who passed away, his name was Tommy, and I mentioned him in here, right here. Tommy made music. He was really good, but that wasn't good enough. He was done with this place before he got here. I just wish he could still wipe my prophetic tears. I wish he could calm my prosthetic fears. I was there virtually over text when he ended his life. He didn't want to be here anymore because the girl who would have been his wife isn't here anymore. He jumped down death's throat in a beige coat with a leather belt, so drunk he couldn't see. How could this happen to me? How could I be so far away when I was needed the most I've ever been needed since I gave birth? Tommy, I know why you chose suicide. I don't blame you, but I will never condone it. I have to sit with your last words to me and mine to you that you will never read. I'm interceding for you in death because your spirit never died. I know how many times you tried. You finally succeeded. I'm sad and angry. I have to live on because you will have died in vain if I don't. Both of us can't go. Both of us won't. You breathed for me on some days. I need the era of your praise back. I won't forget the impact you had on me when you were here. It's all becoming very clear. I will shed tears, but I will smile and laugh too. God took you so you wouldn't throw yourself into a pile of needles. You knew that I know, so you had to go. I didn't believe it at first, but when I saw that last text never went through, I knew what was next. It meant moving on without you. You don't understand what it's like to be me and suddenly remember that I can't talk to you until the next life when I will meet your children and your wife. Or maybe you'll reincarnate to me. It's your choice, but I doubt that if you have one, you're going to return to the bridge you just chose to burn. This isn't a lesson to learn, it's a tragedy. I can't imagine life without you, and yet I have to because you're gone, and I have to move on. How? I made so many sacred vows while you were alive, hoping that you would survive and eventually thrive. I had to pause because this is intense. I guess I was making. Sorry, I had to find my place again. I guess I was making them for me instead because God already told me you'd be dead. My voice is shaking. I'm hanging on by a thread. My heart is broken, still breaking, and I feel utter dread when I have to break bread without you. This is dedicated to you. This is for all the things you always wanted to do with you know who. This is dedicated to every survivor of mental illness that chose life over death, even if it takes every last breath to do it. This is dedicated to my only child, my son, Jacob Lee. My beloved son, you set me free to be me. This is dedicated to those who try to cope without any genuinely authentic hope, but remain never the same. This is for those who lost the game. This is dedicated to those who believe in me beyond all odds and self-inflicted doubts, to the ones that are always there and were there in some of what would have been my final moments. This is for my team that has contributed more to my success than I could ever dream. This is for the homeless veterans and the foster children that wish they were never born. This is for the victims and survivors of suicide whose hearts are severed and severely torn. Do not scorn them. This is for the addict. You are not alone, although it might seem so. You are too precious for words. Ignore the rumors you've heard that you desperately tried not to hear. God has ears too, and he will avenge and defend you. This is for all who dress up to attend church, then fornicate under the steeple. This is for the frauds and scammers that paid their master to become professional spammers during the height of a morbid human disaster. This is dedicated to the American people. May you find peace and inspiration through my work. May your blessings never cease. May you find hidden joy in the tiny graces of creation that employ a new development of internal youth when it chooses to seek the truth. This is for all the children who still believe in the tooth fairy long after they've lost their last tooth. Now they're adults trying to appease their own crying while their own children are lying for them or to them without saying please. This is for all those parents that think they're failing because their kid fell off the railing. They are trying to achieve a lifestyle of a woke parenting. Don't overdo it or they will hate your efforts, which they won't know how to properly express, so it will turn into too many bridges left to burn. Some people never change or learn. This is for the reprobate that hates God. There is nothing left to debate when God silences that hate and chooses to relate to you anyway, even when you refuse to have faith or pray. But don't try to use God, especially in the brand new designer shoes he bought you. This is for the mouths of babes referred to in the Bible for lack of better verbiage and lethally metaphorical in nature. We have finally found the cure, but it's still a newborn. It's going to be immature because it's premature. There's probably going to be 2 parts to this. I haven't seen... I haven't seen this much writing since 2020. I might stop with this one. What if we remembered how to stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy? What if we remembered what we said 5 minutes ago? Because then we would really have the nerve to know. We were with child, but we didn't show. We tried to speak, but it wouldn't flow. We tried to speed, but our neighbor was going too slow. Where and when did we tap out so bad we forgot to see Santa and take pictures on his lap? We flew out to LA from Atlanta. That's like moving to Seattle and losing your battle with an illness. I once wrote about that. What if we lost touch with reality, bringing forth a new dynamic never seen before that was behind every locked door from start to finish, but we finally found the keys before it was too much to diminish, and that's what God sees when he counts to 3 to reassure the Holy Trinity. What if we cost God too much? We hate the term God, but we have it etched in the dollar bills we sketched out in math class because we were so bored. Now, sometimes when life catches up to us, we'd do anything to be that bored again. What if even then, we're trying to make role models for the next gen, but that's begging to be differentiated and forgotten over time, that we don't have it anymore, because it never belonged to us. Therefore, it never wronged us the way we claim it did. Search by name and date for that reprobate who wronged himself more than he wronged God, but now he's in church. I'm going to do a part 2, so you'll just have to look for it on my home screen on TikTok. I love you. Okay, this is intense. This is, I think, the longest poem I've ever written intentionally, like when I wasn't just messing around with lyrics and dialogue. What if we prayed too much or overstayed our welcome with God? We walk on the guiltiest sod since Jesus died over 2,000 years ago. What did he die for? If we're still acting like he didn't, what if he didn't rise from the grave to continue to save us when we worship devils in disguise daily? What would we say and do if he looked us right in the eyes, and rather than punishing us, he supplies a grand surprise? So be wise enough to recognize the lies when they approach you, because they will, and they are clever enough to kill, just for the thrill of it, because their anguish does not cease. They do not rest in peace. That's what happens when we rest in peace while we're alive and breathing. It's like teething. We choose to suffer now so that we may inherit the kiss of bliss when we move on without attempting to avoid a buffer. It just makes us tougher, but shatters the soul inside the spirit when we can't remember how to take control. Remembering is the goal. Endurance is a requirement for the lead role. Do we really want it? Are we willing to fight to stay out of the spotlight? The lights are too bright. We can't see at night. We don't remember how to, do we? Be honest with me. Are you truly ready to be free? We need a better alibi because the one we have thinks its actions don't stink. Our ego winks at us wickedly, but our spirit remains calm, reaching for and rubbing in some aloe vera lip balm. Why do we have to face this? There is nothing to embrace. We want to run, but we can't because we are lost. Lord, we can't afford how much you cost. We are begging for mercy once again in the land of mortal men. Will we finally remember when, and will we cope with no hope from way back then? Serial trauma causes genetic drama that we can't just dismiss. We won't find this where we put it, but we should already know that. The omen is the missing cat and the reptiles that eat the rats that were never on file because no one ever saw them. So no one could draw them and replicate the debate on their harsh existence. Do we relate, or do we choose to still hate our fellow man in any way we can? This is dedicated to Jamie Wilkes, who I met on Twitter in early 2019 and will likely no longer be with us by the time this is in print. Why is it always a race to the finish line? You will always be mine. Thank you for being my anchor when no one else really cared, and they still don't, but they will very soon. I feel it transpiring under a full moon. I need a fully loaded platoon. This is for those who feel like the good ones fade away too fast, but the bad ones live on. This is for all those good ones that are gone. What is freedom to me? I'm still guilty of absent-mindedly yelling crucify when it isn't my time or my turn to die. I'm guilty of nailing his hands and his feet and exclusively from past lives in David's bloodline, but it wasn't time to call them mine. Break the bread, drink the wine, do whatever you must to face whatever you currently dread. I won't ask you to face it alone, but don't ever dare to think that you can hold your saving grace over my head. You don't bite the hands that feed you while you're being fed. Freedom is being myself exclusively. Freedom is being thine unto thee in the presence of divinity. Freedom is knowing what's best for me, what's best for my family beyond the confines of what I can see. Freedom is establishing my right to personal security without the fear of offending someone I've never met because they can't see over and through the blindfold yet. They haven't realized they're more than the bet they lost with themselves before the trial ever began. The eyes of God are far different from the eyes of man. What he will do is much different from what he can. What has freedom seen? Freedom fought for the infamy that is caught between the legs of Jezebel, thrust into a notorious hell until it is found by the holy and eternal twin flame of the opposite name, disguised in shame to rid hell of the lies it chose to tell of the love that is only found from above, unconditionally. Freedom has seen a solar wave wipe a karmic slate clean to save us. Freedom has seen itself clarify exactly what it means when God forgave us. Freedom has seen the best at its worst and the worst at its best. Freedom has held every dream it ever chased closely to its chest. Freedom has seen The noble leave a global legacy for people like me who have vision they can hardly see with, but it was never a filthy myth, even if the illusion says so. And when it does, it's got to go. Freedom has seen who it needs to be. Freedom has seen what it must see. Freedom has seen why it chose to be free. For what has freedom died? Freedom has tried to save every child who died. Freedom has died for every time you or I have cried for the lost souls that are still screaming to be born. Freedom has died for all to be vindicated and justified, that were torn from the wombs and arms of their parents whom lost everything to survive in a world without their children. I wonder how, I wonder when. The time is now. Give God the chance to avenge without warning one quiet, ordinary morning. Freedom has died for deaths that have multiplied. Freedom has died for every breath that's been stolen from the lungs of who it belongs to. Freedom has died for every shoe the homeless couldn't fill while they were violently ill. Freedom has died for the choice to live or die, so explain that to death row to approve a new amendment that is spent on our rights to live in a freedom we have only dreamed of. Curse the illusion, end the intrusion. Freedom has died for the experience of the rhetorical expression of wondering why. Freedom has died to redeem every single time we have chosen to lie. Freedom has died to restore courage and confidence to the broken and the insecure obscurity of being shy. Freedom has died so we can give it one more try. And why has freedom cried? Freedom has cried so our tears can dry. Freedom has cried so our ears can reply. Freedom has cried so the truth will imply of what it has witnessed and what it has done in a battle that will righteously tattle on every liar that tries to rattle someone else's cage from the outside, looking in to prevent them from an unfortunate wind that takes them down the words of yet another page with a subtle hidden rage. Part 3. I am finally at the end of this page. Freedom has cried to empty this stage. Freedom has cried to prevent this all-consuming rage. Freedom has cried for the passing age. Freedom has cried for the sake of its own minimum wage. Freedom has cried for its forsaken stage. Freedom has gone through it all for the sake of the omnipresent, omnipotent call. Nothing has freedom denied that slavery hasn't implied. Freedom has done this to prove this adolescent truth with mature proof. Men and women in these wars aren't telling you what they died for. They've sacrificed more than their friends, families, and lives of where the debilitating system thrives. For the sake of freedom's cause, we must stand for their honor, nobility, dignity, and courage for just a taste of their eternal applause. Freedom asks you to open your eyes and see what it must tell you before it fell from its wistful power to endorse the whitest horse you've ever seen with the whitest knight that rode all night just to see you, just to free you. Freedom blend to my bad. Freedom bled to fix the hands that fed you because they were once the hands that fed them too. Rush for your next crush. Freedom gave you the power to be with whom you love and not who you're told to love. Wow. So I just read a poem that took probably 25 minutes in total. Maybe 30. I don't know. I don't even think I have a title on this. I think I was just trying to make it the one poem that I had told somebody that used to be a client of mine, that I'm going to write a piece that will be the pinnacle of my career, and I will retire after that. I was trying to make that happen with this, but it's not supposed to happen yet. I don't think it's supposed to happen for at least a few more years. Okay, so I called this Freedom 2022 edition. Somehow, all of what I mentioned fits in together with this. It's really interesting. It's going to be even more interesting trying to put all these videos together. I'm going to have to put them in clips on TikTok, and I'll put them all together for YouTube. I love you, and thank you for being interested in my poetry. You are awesome.